Flashes. So today we are going to review your Q3 benchmark study guide. Okay, so the first four, it says to solve for the variable. So our first two are equations because they have equal signs. So remember, when you're solving an equation, you are trying to get your variable by itself, and you need to move all other numbers on the same side of the variable over to the other side of the equal sign. And you always want to move your constant first, so that is the number that's adding or subtracting and not attached to the variable. So in this case, we need to move the 12. And to move it, you have to do its inverse operation. So if it's adding 12, the opposite of adding 12 is subtracting 12. And you want to make sure that you're subtracting 12 from both sides of that equal sign. So your plus 12 minus 12 cancel. You're left with 3x equals, and then negative 75 minus 12 gives us negative 87. And then we still need to get x by itself, so we need to move that 3. Right now, 3 and x are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And remember to show your fraction bar to show me that you're dividing. So you are left with x equals, and then negative 87 divided by 3 gives us negative 29. All right, and then check, that means that you're plugging your answer back in for x and rewriting the problem. So plug negative 29 in for x. And again, the reason why we make you guys check your work is because you guys can tell whether or not you did it correctly. Because if I were to plug this in my calculator, 3 times negative 29 is negative 87. Add a positive 12, and I do get negative 75. So I know I did this problem correct. Okay. All right, number 2, so notice how we have some parentheses, so that's why our first step is to simplify. So if you can't do anything on the inside of the parentheses, that's when you move on to the outside. And remember, a number shoved up next to parentheses means that you're multiplying. And when you're multiplying, you want to make sure that you're taking your outside number and multiplying it times everything on the inside of that parentheses, and that's what we call the distributive property. So negative 6 times x is negative 6x. You can bring down that plus sign, or if you guys realize, if I take negative 6 times 8, we get negative 48, so in other words, that would be at minus 48. So you could have minus 48, or you could have plus a negative 48. And then all of that will equal the 96 that's still there. Okay. So next thing that we need to do is we can now start solving for x, since we have a two-step equation and everything is simplified. So my first number that I need to move is 48. Since it's subtracting 48, the opposite of subtracting is adding. So I'm going to add 48 to both sides. My minus 48 plus 48 will cancel. I'm left with negative 6x equals, and then 96 plus 48 gives me 144. And my last step to get x by itself is to divide by that negative 6 on both sides. So 144 divided by negative 6 gives me a negative 24. And again, when you guys go to check it, you can plug it back in here or in the simplified equation. So let's say I plug it back in the simplified equation. I'm just going to plug in that negative 24 in for x and then rewrite everything else. And then just make sure that you actually do check it. And if you do, we did it correctly. All right, so those were equations. So if we move on down here, notice now that we have inequalities. But remember, you're solving inequalities the same way that you solved equations. It's just something might change based on if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, okay? So same thing. If you are solving an inequality, You still want to get your variable by itself, so you need to move the number that's on the same side as x, not attached to it, because you need to move the constant. So we need to move this plus 10. So to move it, the opposite of adding 10 is subtracting 10. So our result is negative 5x. Bring down that greater than or equal to symbol, and then 90 minus 10 is 80. And then your last step to get x by itself is to divide by that negative 5 on both sides. And the way that I taught my students was, as soon as you see that you just divided by a negative sign, there should be like a red flashing light going on in the back of your brain right now, because as soon as you multiply or divide by a negative number, we need to switch that inequality sign. And I do that before I even solve, so that I don't forget to do it. Okay? So since I divided by a negative, I had to flip my inequality sign. So the gator mouth was open towards the left, so when I flip it, it's now open towards the right. Alright, and then I can go ahead and finish solving it. So I'm going to be left with x is less than or equal to, and then 80 divided by negative 5 is negative 16. Alright, so we did take out the check part with inequalities because we would like for you guys to graph them. So your answer that you get will be your middle number down here, and then you can fill in one number to the right of it and one number to the left of it. You can even fill the rest of it in if you would like. And the reason why the numbers are going this way, because if I were to keep going, 0 would be down here. So this would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and that's why it goes this way, okay? So at negative 16, we are going to have a closed circle because of that equal to line. So I'm going to have a closed circle. And then since we want all numbers less than or equal to negative 16, all numbers less than negative 16 are to the left of it. So I'm going to shade in my arrow to the left. Alright, remember you guys can pause this video at any time. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on. Number 4, same thing. So you want to move your constant that's on the same side as x, which means I should move this negative 25. So the opposite of subtracting 25 is adding it to both sides. So your minus 25 plus 25 cancel. We are left with x over 2 equals, and then, oh, not equals, sorry. We are talking about inequalities now. So this is a less than symbol. And then negative 17 plus 25 is a positive 8. And then our last step to get x by itself, right now x and 2 are dividing. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides, and my answer is going to be x is less than positive 16. So I did not multiply by negative, so that's why my inequality sign stays the same. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my number line down here at the bottom. Since 16 was my answer, that's my middle number, and I can just fill in the numbers around it. So at 16, I'm going to have an open circle because it does not have the equal to line. And then since I want all numbers less than 16, that's going to be pointing towards the left here. Alright, so that's how you solve equations and inequalities. So let's use that to answer number 5. So number 5 says identify all equations that have an equivalent solution to 3x minus 12 equals 24. So the thing that we need to do here is we need to first solve for x and then figure out what other equations would that work for. Okay, so if I were to solve for x, I have to move this minus 12, so the opposite of subtracting 12 is adding it. I'm going to be left with 3x equals 36. And then my last step to get x by itself is to divide by that 3 on both sides. So I'm going to get an answer of x equals 12. So there's a couple different ways that you guys can do this. After you know what your answer is, you can, one, go double check to make sure that 12 is your answer, which in this case it will be. Then you can go ahead and solve all of these problems for x, just like I did here. Or probably the easier way is you can plug in 12 in for x in every single equation, just like you're checking your work, and see if you actually get the same thing. So let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So like for this first one, if I'm trying to see if x equals 12 is a solution to this equation, I can plug in 12 for x, rewrite the rest of the equation, and then see if it works. So if I were to take 15 times 12, that gives me 180. And then if I were to take 180 minus 60, that gives me 120. So does 120 equal 120? Yes, it does. So if it works out, I know that that equation is a solution, is an equivalent solution to this equation. Okay? So let's try B. So we have 3x equals 12, plug in 12 for x, and see if it works out. So 3 times 12 is 36. So does 36 equal 12? No, it does not. So B is not an equivalent solution. All right, let's try the next one. X minus 4 equals 8. Plug in 12 for x. So does 12 minus 4, does 8 equal 8? Yep. So C is a equivalent solution. And then you still need to check this last one. So again, plug 12 in for x and just rewrite the rest of the equation. So this is going to be 12 times 12, which is 144. And then 144 minus 12 gives me 132. So does 132 equal 24? No, it does not. So our answers are going to be A and C. So again, you guys could solve all of these equations for x just like we did up here. Okay, by doing the step result, step answer, check. Or once you get the answer to the first equation, you can just plug 12 in for all the x's and then just solve it like you're checking your work to see which one works out. Okay, so do whichever one you feel most comfortable with, but that's probably the way that I would do it because I think that this way might be a little bit quicker. Okay. All right, moving on to the back. So number 6, which number line shows the solution to the inequality negative 3x minus 5 is less than negative 2? So before I even start solving, I know for sure that 2 of these number lines that are given are not going to be the answer because do you guys see how we have some open circles and some closed circles? Well, based on our inequality, we know for sure that our graph has to be an open circle because it does not have that equal to line. So all the graphs over here that have the closed circles are not going to be the answers. So I know for sure that it's going to be A or C. So that's just a trick for you guys too. So just make sure that you guys look out for that so that now you guys know, well, it's either going to be A or C for my answer. Okay? So let's go ahead and solve it. So first thing that I need to do is move this minus 5. So the opposite of subtracting 5 is adding it. So negative 2 plus 5 gives me 3, and my 5's cancel. And I just have to drop that negative 3x down. And then my last step to get x by itself is to divide by that -3 on both sides. And as soon as you do that step, you guys should remember, oh, I just divided by a negative. So when I divide by a negative, I need to flip my inequality sign. And again, guys, I do that before I even finish solving so that I don't forget to do that, okay? So my -3's cancel. I'm left with x is greater than, and 3 divided by -3 is -1. And again, I know that that should have been my answer, -1, because all of our graphs start at -1. Now we just need to figure out, is it A or C? Well, if we want all numbers greater than -1, and the trick is going to work here because my variable is on the left-hand side, notice how our inequality is pointing to the right, so A is going to be my answer. All right, number 7, find the area of the given circle. Use 3.14 for pi. All right, so they do give us the formula. So right here where it says formula, you're just going to recopy it down. So area equals pi r squared. Substitute, so remember substitute means you're plugging numbers into the formula. So they told us that pi is 3.14. R means radius, and if you guys remember, radius is talking about half of the circle, and diameter is talking about the line that goes all the way through the circle. So if you guys notice, they do give us the radius, so I'm going to plug in 5 for R, and then I'm going to square it because it tells me to square my radius. So thinking of PEMDAS, remember that you guys need to take the exponent first. So if you were to take 5 squared, that gives you 25. And then you can take that times 3.14, and you should get 78.5. And then my unit is centimeters, and since we're talking about area, this would be centimeters squared. All right, number 8, find the circumference of the given circle. Use 3.14 for pi. So remember, there were 2 circumference formulas, and I told you guys to pick the circumference formula that correlates with the circle. So if they give you radius, you should use the circumference formula that has r in it. If they give you diameter, you should use the circumference formula that has the d in it. So in this case, they give us the diameter, so I want to use this formula that has d in it, since d stands for diameter. So my formula that I'm using is the pi d formula. Substitute means I'm plugging numbers into my formula, so they told me to use 3.14 for pi, and the diameter was 12. So all that I need to do is take 3.14 times 12, and that gives me 37.68 centimeters. All right, number 9, find the surface area. So if you guys remember, surface area was talking about the amount of space on the outside of the object. So that's talking about, like, if I were to wrap this box up, or how much material goes on the outside of it. So surface area is the outside. Let's review. So circumference is talking about the distance around the circle. So what is this distance around the circle? And then area was talking about the amount of space on the inside of the circle. So that's just a review for you guys. So they give us the formula to be 2 times LW plus LH plus WH. So I'm just recopying down the formula. Substitute means you're plugging numbers into the formula. So looking at my box over here, 10 would be my length, 8 would be the width, and 3 would be the height. So L was 10, And remember, when variables are shoved up next to each other, that means that you're going to multiply them. So I'm going to have 10 times 8. Nope, I'm not going to do that yet. Bring down the plus sign. L was 10. Our height is 3. Width was 8. And height was 3. Alright, so we need to simplify these first. So I'm just going to do this off to the side. So that 2 we're going to leave out front right now. And then 10 times 8 is 80. Bring down the plus sign. 10 times 3 was 30. And then 8 times 3 was 24. So the reason why I had to multiply first before I added was because of PEMDAS. PEMDAS says I need to multiply before I add. So I had 3 sets of multiplication that I had to do inside the parentheses, and then now I can add them together. So 80 plus 30 plus 24 gives me 134. And then the last thing that I need to do is take that 2 times 134, and I'm going to get a surface area of 268 centimeters squared. Alright guys, moving on. Number 10, find the volume of the cylinder. So remember, volume is talking about the amount of space on the inside of this object. So our volume formula is pi r squared h. Substitute, plug numbers into the formula. So pi is 3.14. R means radius, so if you notice, they give us the line that goes all the way through the circle on the other side, which is the diameter. So to get the radius from the diameter, all that you have to do is take 14 divided by 2, because we just want half of the line, because half of it will be the radius. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that's the number that we want to plug in for R. And then our height is the height of the cylinder, which in this case is 10. Alright, so let's go ahead and solve this. So if I were to take 7 squared, that's 7 times 7, which is 49. Take that times 10 times 3.14, and I am going to get a volume of 1,538.6. And we are talking about centimeters again. So cubic centimeters. Remember, volume is cubed. Alright, number 11, find the mean for the given set of data, round to the nearest tenth. So I know that we didn't teach you guys this yet, but you guys should have learned this last year. But when you find the mean, that means that you are adding up all of the numbers that they give you and then divide it by how many numbers there are. Okay, so if I were to take 83 plus 97 plus 100 plus 81 plus 73 plus 84 plus 94 plus 91 and plus 81, you get 784. And then the last thing that you want to do is take that 784 and divide it by however many numbers there were. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 784 divided by 9 gives us 87.1 repeating, but they told us to round to the nearest tenth. So 87.1 repeating would just be 87.1. Okay. So remember, mean means average. So when you're finding the average, you're just adding up all the numbers and then dividing it by however many numbers that you have. All right, number 12, find the median for the given set of data. So median, if you guys remember, means middle. But the thing that you guys have to remember about the median is you have to list these numbers in order from least to greatest first, and then you can find out which one's the middle one. So let's do that. So our smallest number is 73. Then we have a 81 and another 81. We have an 83, 84, 91, 94, 97, and 100. So as I go through this, I like to cross them out as I go so that hopefully I don't forget about any, and then I go back and double check to make sure that there were 9 numbers that I listed, which I did. Okay. So finding the middle number, I just take my finger and my pencil sometimes and I just walk my way in until they meet at one number. So in this case, our middle number is 84. All right, and the last one, find the mode for the given set of data. So mode means most. So what number occurs the most? And if you guys realize, our numbers that occurred the most were 81. Okay. All right, so that I'm going to end the video there because we are going to go through this backside in class because this backside is the open response part that you guys have taken in class already or are going to take it in class. So I'm going to keep those for class time, but just make sure that you guys got the rest of your study guide. And as you guys know, study guides are pretty much identical to the test. So in this case, this study guide is pretty much identical to your final. So if you guys feel good about what we just talked about, then you guys should do well on your final. And if you guys didn't feel comfortable, just make sure you guys go back and maybe rewatch this video a couple times. Go back to your guys' Canvas lessons and look at those videos on the stuff that you need extra help with. And then just make sure that you guys study and are prepared for your final. So let your teachers know if you guys have any questions.